And today I wanted to talk about undefended pieces and improving your sense of danger in chess. Lower rated players and those who are taking their first steps in chess have a real problem with undefended pieces, both in their own position and recognizing them in their opponent's position. And I've long believed in chess that you can get to a pretty decent level simply by recognizing when you have loose pieces of your own and taking advantage of the times that your opponent has loose pieces. Okay? And what I'm going to do with these couple games that we play, and I think we're going to play 2 games in this video, is I'm going to play in a manner that I consider to be pretty safe. And I'm going to show you like what sort of opportunities present themselves when you focus on having a sound position, following basic concepts, and not leaving yourself hanging out to dry. Okay? Because I can tell you from my own students and the beginning players that I work with, the times that they most often get into trouble and the biggest leaks in the game that are apparent are in situations involving undefended pieces. So I'd be willing to bet that this player, Nostradamus, gives us at least a few opportunities to simply win material without us having to do too much in this game. Okay, so I chose an opening, and I know I was talking over the opening moves here. I chose an opening that's very solid for white. It's the London system. I'm not advocating that you play this opening necessarily. I'm just using this for illustrative purposes. But notice already my position. I have virtually everything defended. Okay, my bishop that I brought out to f4 is anchored by my pawn on e3. My pawn that's foremost in the center on d4 is defended by this e3 pawn. My knights are communicating with each other on d2 and f3. Basically, you want to get in the habit of constantly scanning your position for weaknesses. This isn't something that ideally you would do on every single move. Eventually, it will become like a subconscious thing. And that's why when you look at games of good players, it's almost like they have this sixth sense for knowing when they have something loose in their position. Okay, so here, just scanning the position, can you see any potential weaknesses that I have? There aren't many. In fact, I think the only thing that maybe stands out is this undefended pawn on b2. Now, I could try to push it, like let's say pawn b3, but if I'm anticipating ways he can attack this pawn, what's the only way he could do that? You can pause your video if you like. What's the only way black could really attack the b2 pawn? If you said queen b6, you're right. So queen b6 is a move that I would want to have on my radar because that would attack one of my undefended pieces. Okay, as it stands now, I'm going to play a pawn advance. I'm going to go c4. And before I played c4, I just checked to make sure that I had it defended. And I do. I have it defended by my knight on d2 and also my bishop on c4. That they're giving their opponent just easy opportunities based on undefended pieces. I always compare it to, it's like unforced errors in tennis. I'm going to play rook c1 here, just further reinforcing this pawn and maybe making use of the file. Concepts or worrying too much about your pawn structure. Because you're just shooting yourself in the foot every time you play, right? You got to get that taken care of. Nostradamus, I've chosen this guy. I don't know this player, by the way. He's just someone I randomly found on chess.com. I got to give him credit. He's playing well so far. If I look at his position, I don't see too many weak spots. He's done a good job of defending his pawn center. So this pawn on d5 is well protected. It has 1, 2, 3 defenders, his knight, his queen, and his pawn. I'm scanning the position right now for weak points that I could maybe attack. One thing I notice is his b-pawn. It's currently defended by his bishop. I think when he moves his knight back to f8, he's planning to bring this bishop out. So I'm actually going to play queen b3 as a way of kind of testing him and seeing how he deals with this pressure on the b7 pawn. Okay. Now, if you imagine you were black in this position, and I kind of wish I could flip the board around and play, but it's not possible. But imagine you were black here, and you were solely focused on your plan, which after knight f8 might have been to get the bishop out. It would be so easy for you to blunder and play bishop e6 or bishop f5 in this position, and just hand white the b7 pawn, right? But it's good that he's not doing that. He's playing knight h5. So he's attacking my bishop. I'm going to withdraw this bishop to h2. That's actually why I played h3 way back on move 6. Just wanted to give this bishop a little cubby hole to retreat to. Kind of latent pressure on b7. And he's played a solid move. He's played e6. Okay, that locks in the bishop further, but he's reinforcing a pawn. I'm just going to centralize. I'm going to play rook fd1. Again, there's some moves I'm playing right now that I perhaps would not normally make in a game, but I'm just trying to play in a straightforward way that kind of illustrates these concepts that I'm talking about. And like I said, this player is doing a good job of keeping everything under wraps. Okay, this move g5, let's think about this. It's a somewhat bizarre looking move. In the context of undefended pieces, what is the problem with g5? If you said that it undefends the knight on h5, you're correct. Okay, so by virtue of his last move, he's depriving his knight on h5 of a defender. So immediately when I saw that g5 move, my attention turned to that knight. Okay, because that might be a tactical opportunity for us. And in that regard, what moves would we look at? Well, I would look at moves with this knight. So the very first move I looked at was knight takes g5. Unfortunately, even though that's a discovered attack on his knight, he can take us with his queen. He can play queen takes g5, so I'm not going to play that move. I could play knight e5. I kind of like the look of that because that jumps a knight to the middle and also attacks this knight. I might want to hold that move in reserve. Another option that's very interesting is pawn to g4. That would attack his knight, and then if he were to move his knight back to f6, does anyone see an undefended piece that we could perhaps capture? And it's the pawn on g5, so I could play knight takes g5 then. And I think it does work in my favor. So you know what? I'm going to go ahead and play this g4 move and attack his knight and see how he replies. Almost certainly he'll play knight f6. There's a greater chance he wouldn't see the attack on his knight if I had made some other move, like with my knight, like maybe knight e5. But I wonder if it's dawning on him now that the reason I'm playing g4 is in order to take that pawn on g5. Okay, so now I'll continue with my plan. You guys notice how all of my attention shifted to this area of the board. Like a couple moves ago, I was talking about my pressure on b7, but as soon as he made that g5 move, that's got to send off alarm bells in your head. Like the knight on h5 was undefended. So that's the first thing I looked at. If I had decided that there was no way to exploit that undefended knight on h5, then I probably would have focused my attention elsewhere. Okay, so he shows that he's kind of understanding what's going on. So he's doing a discovered attack on my knight with the queen now hitting g5. So if I were to simply take back, he's going to take my knight. But I'm going to do this in-between move. So this is like a desperado sacrifice, they would call it. So I'm trying to get maximum value for the knight that I know is going to be lost for me. Okay. And I think if I'm calculating this correctly, I'm going to win a pawn based on this combination when all is said and done. And that started way back when he played g5 a few moves ago. But given this guy's rating, I think, and the fact that he's playing an IM, I think he's doing a great job so far. I give this player a lot of credit. So he plays queen h4. That's interesting. He's not taking my knight. He's going for a counterattack. I think I'm just going to take his knight, and I could play pawn takes or bishop takes. I think I'm going to go bishop takes, actually. I trust that a little bit more. So notice by playing bishop takes, I'm defending this potential weakness on h3. Now I would expect him to take my knight. Nothing else really makes sense for him. And when he takes my knight, I'm going to attack. I'm going to play, I think knight f3 will be the move I go with. So attack the queen. Just try to back him off a little bit. I like the fact that I can maybe now get into e5 or potentially g5 later. And I've won a pawn through all this. I've got an extra f-pawn compared to him. I'm constantly scanning the board for more weaknesses, more potential weaknesses I could attack. I'm checking to see if I have undefended pieces. Everything looks pretty secure for me. My knight that he's eyeing is defended by my bishop, so I like that. I could check him on h5 with my bishop, but he goes knight to g6. Just seeing if I have any tactics based on that operation. I don't see anything off the top of my head. Bishop e5, I'm very tempted to play. You know, I'm just gonna play it simple. I'll bring the knight into e5 with check. So I'll support this guy, f4. f4 creates a potential weakness on e3. I do have my queen defending that, so it's not a pure weakness yet. Overprotection is a really great concept that can help you minimize blunders and mistakes involving undefended pieces and loose pieces. So now I'm overprotecting this knight on e5. It's defended 1, 2, and if we count the bishop on h2, 3 times. So that's great. He still has trouble developing this piece because I've got that pressure here. Okay, he plays pawn h5. And immediately I ask myself, why can't I take that pawn? And when I'm looking at the position, I don't see why I can't. If I take it, my bishop is undefended. Okay, so I want to look at ways he can exploit that. But he can't check me on g6 because I cover that square twice. He can't check me on g5 because I would take him with my pawn. If queen f5, I could just take his rook on e8. So I'm going to take this. I don't think he has anything. And that move right there, that's a really good illustration of the types of moves that players, I'd say even below 1400, maybe below 1200, they play a lot. There's unforced errors, and you want to be ready to take advantage of them. But at the end of the day, I got to trust my instincts that he just made a mistake. Okay, I think my bishop is fine on h5. I could leave it undefended. I'm going to go king h1 just to get more firepower down the file. If I was really concerned about that bishop, I would move it back to g4. But I've seen that if he goes and attacks it, like let's say with queen h6, I can play bishop g4 then. Or if this move, I have bishop g4 once more. So no big deal. No harm, no foul. Everything defended. Nothing out of place for us. Okay, and he took my knight on e5. And remember, I overprotected that piece, so I'm glad to be able to take back. Which way should I take? Both captures look pretty good. I'm going to take this way just because I want to keep my king a little bit better defended. Maybe I didn't want to open the F file. I like the fact that my rook can come over to g1 soon and harass his king. If he plays bishop d7, I might even grab on the pawn on b7. He plays b5, so he's lashing out a little bit. It's probably not a bad move. I'm just going to push. I'm going to keep this closed. I just didn't want his bishop to become a problem down this diagonal. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to play the rook over to g1. Rook d7. I think he's trying to play d4 with that move, but e6 now lacks a defender. Actually, he undefended that pawn twice because he moved his rook to block his bishop. So only his knight is looking at that pawn. So I'm have my eye on that e6 pawn still. I'm going here, setting up some x-ray threats. He should respond to that. He should move his king or block with his rook g7. I think rook d7 kind of indicated he wasn't quite sure how to proceed in this position. Okay, now he's bailing out with his king. Let's just bring our queen over, queen d3. I just like the position that my queen is in here. Maybe he'll run away king e8. I don't know. I could attack his queen at a moment's notice too with bishop g3 if I wanted. He offers a trade. I think now I'm going to play f5. Before I played f5, I checked to make sure this pawn advance is properly supported, and it is by my bishop on g4 and my queen on d3. 2 defenders. He has 2 attackers, but it's no problem. Okay, good move by him. So he's saying that if I take, he's going to win my queen. It's good thinking. I'm going to support this pawn again, kind of anticipating that he might bring this rook over, and he does. And yeah, that's actually a pretty good move. I'm going to go here, reasoning that if he takes my pawn, I can play bishop h5. But yeah, and he's probably going to let me do that. But that was good thinking on his part, at least, like trying to attack that pawn multiple times on f5. It was a smart strategy. He should take my pawn on f5. He doesn't really have much of a choice. And unfortunately, he took with his queen. So yeah, undefended or weakly defended piece error. So he didn't see that I could play rook takes queen. Now I'm not going to take his rook yet. I'm just going to keep piling up on that piece. Let's bring the queen over. Yeah, his time situation makes this somewhat of a moot point at this stage, but yeah, let's just bring our queen in. And I went on time.